I'm delighted to have a chat with Jennifer Golding, a transitioning teacher, now project manager. Over the last 6 months, I've witnessed this wave of teachers leaving the teaching profession to pursue opportunities in the project management space. Jennifer and I have been LinkedIn friends during this time, and when I saw her announcement that she had a new position in project management, I knew I needed to get her on the show. Take a listen to part one of our conversation. All right, Jennifer, I am so super excited to have you on my podcast because you are in a space where there's a lot of chatter around transitioning teachers, particularly into the field of project management. So when I saw that you had made the official transition, I said, I have to talk to that lady. So I wanted to kind of start off with my first question to you is, do you remember how we met, how we connected with each other?
I don't.
I think I probably stalked you.
Either that or I reached out to you. Oh my goodness.
It might have been. I think it was like the mutual, like I saw you, you saw me, and it's like, we should become friends. So
yeah,
that's the power of LinkedIn, people. Like
it is. I have met so many people like that.
That's great. And it's been good, right? It hasn't been creepy or anything like
that? There's probably been just a few creepies, like we all get everywhere, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere. But you can
coffee shop.
weed those out. Yeah.
You do that. Okay, gotta go to Mars.
Yeah.
Cool. I always love to ask that question to see if we have the same recollection and honestly, like kind of put myself on blast, like maybe I need to like reach out more, or do we meet at this coffee shop like I was mentioning? But that's interesting. So what is your 30-second elevator explanation as to what you do right now?
Okay, so for right now, it's a brand new role. So what's great is it gets to mold and there's some ideas around it. And I'm basically helping my company, Codalicious, in an assistant project manager role, grow the business by getting onto state standard list, vendors list, Department of Ed list, going to conferences, and other things to be revealed at some point as we grow.
That's it's called Codalicious.
It is Codalicious. It is a computer science curriculum company.
All right, that's awesome. I love their name. That's super delicious. I like that. So what's a fun fact about yourself that's not on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile?
Well, I was going to say gardening, but then I realized it's actually in my LinkedIn about me. I think what's definitely not in there is I have a little obsession to fancy nails. So like today, it's not going to show up well. I have like a flamingo on my nails. Last week I had sparkles. I'm a big glitter fan. So there's a lot of nails happening, but I do them myself. Long ago, before children, that was my pampering. So now I just do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That is awesome. Well, for the meat and potatoes of what we have come together about, as I may have mentioned before, and I can't remember, you're a transitioning teacher, and you are now into the project management space, as you had mentioned with your 30-second elevator pitch, your assistant project manager. I'd love to hear about your journey. And I know others who are listening would love to hear about your journey. Number one, why project management, and what were some of the kind of first steps that you took and maybe would recommend for others?
Okay, so let's tackle that number one first. The why is because several years ago, before the position that I had left, I had worked as an early childhood specialist for a nonprofit social service agency. And in my role there, I worked with child care centers and for a while with home care centers, but to get them accredited. And to have a business accredited is a project in itself, and it's very structured. You have a certain time frame you have to do it within, certain documents you have to collect, certain things you have to change. So I have always loved organizing things, putting things into categories, listing them, helping people get from point A to point B. When we moved to Texas in 2011, they did not have the same type of role. So I went back into the classroom setting and I stayed there for almost 10 years. About 2 years ago, I was like, I love the kids, I love my job, but this is not where I want to be anymore. The passion is just not there. I want to go back to putting things into place. And about that same time 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to lead our campus because it was a small district through a textbook adoption for the new ELAR curriculum. And so that was like, ooh, this is what I need. Right back to project management. Although it's never been called project management, that's exactly what you're doing. You're presenting the materials, you're going from here's what we need to look at, here's what the school needs, here's what's allowed, here's how we're going to get there, and then here's all the input we need from everybody on the team to get there. And so that started the ball rolling towards going, okay, I need to make a plan. So I went two things. I mapped out kind of how I wanted to do things and spaced them out. Of course, everybody knows COVID kind of messed with our timelines a little bit, but we all have to be a little flexible, right? And then the other thing is the thing I felt I lacked before when I was working with childcare centers was understanding the HR side of it. And when you're working with people, and I didn't quite exactly know where in project management I was going to end up, I felt it was important to know the HR side because you need to know the laws, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what needs to be reported, because that all becomes, especially if you're in certain forms of project management, that gets included in what you're doing because you start to have to hire staff, so you have to know the laws. So I took a course through the local university here and kind of finished up about the same time I put my resignation in last year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then so in May of 2021 was my last day in the classroom.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And when did
quite
remind us again, when did you get this new project management position?
I did this position. April 19th was my start date.
Okay.
So there was some time off in between. So my journey is probably not like a lot of other people's because I took that summer off to kind of decompress. But at the same time, my little guy has been going through special ed testing and all sorts of other things. So I just kind of took that time to take care of what he needed.
Gotcha.
Because when you teach, especially that last year and a half, it was so hard to be able to do what you needed to do for your class and for your family.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm just going to take that time. It's going to be for him. And so did that, got everything he needed, got him squared away to start kindergarten. We had a 504 to see if that's all he needed to get through. And I was still worried. So I kind of looked for a job, but I picked up part-time tutoring through the district that I lived in to kind of supplement. So my real focus did not actually start looking for a job till actually the beginning of 2022.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
So even though I left in May and I kind of dabbled around in the fall of 2021, it wasn't till January. It was like, okay, now things are in place for him. We have services in place, additional services we had to add. Okay, now I can go back. We have a routine. There's a structure. Here's what I need to do. As for someone who makes a ton of lists, this was the first time I actually did not make a very detailed plan of everything because the job market is different nowadays than it's ever been. And when you look for a job in the business world, it's completely different from education. So I couldn't fall back on what I knew. I knew I could interview, I could answer questions, but when you go for a teaching position, usually you interview. It's the same standard 10 questions, no matter where you interview with the panel. You hear by that afternoon, yes or no, and a lot of times it's yes, can you start the next day? In business, wow. It's, getting to know the talent acquisition manager, it's getting to network, it's having 3, 4, I've heard people have 5 or 6 rounds of interviews. So I knew starting out that I needed to say here, okay, I need to make some connections. I need to learn about the industry so I can really narrow down where I want to go. And I need to have informational interviews and then I need to ask for help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, I have to pause. I tell people all the time about informational interviews, and I don't think they're really leveraging that. Can you give us a little bit more on that? Like, what made you kind of have those informational interviews? What are some of the things that you said to people to get them to say, yes, I'll have this informational interview with you?
It was actually there's a gentleman who does a post on Tuesdays for job seekers. And I met someone through him who led me to somebody else. See, networking is as it works, right?
Absolutely.
And she said, let me look at your resume. I'm an HR person. I've been in HR for X number of years. I also have project management experience. And so she went through it and she says, you have a lot of skills in different areas, but you don't seem like you're focused yet. So this is towards the beginning of January, right? And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, because I feel like I could work here and work here. She's like, you need to focus. And the easiest way to focus, because it's easy to redesign your resume for any job application. But when you're talking to people, they want to know that's what you want. So she said,
Mhm.
the easiest way is you need to do informational interviews and you just ask people and start with contacts that you know first. So I started with three main industries: project management. I looked at specifically curriculums, and then I looked at HR because HR, there is a facet of it that has project management and onboarding that's lumped together. So I could
Mhm.
put two skills together because I'd also way back had done trainings for childcare staff. So I was like,
Okay.
oh, I could put it together. And so I just would send them messages on LinkedIn. I noticed that you're doing this. I'm transitioning. I don't really want to know so much about the company. I really want to know about your role. Because it didn't matter to me if the informational interview I was doing was with a company I wanted to interview for. I wanted the information about what their job was like,
Mhm.
how they liked it. And then I also went for people who did not start out in the roles they were in now. So I interviewed one guy in Houston who started out in the automotive business and is now in project management. I started with when I knew I did not want to do sales for curriculum or training for curriculum, with a gentleman who had started in the classroom and was now for a major curriculum department. But at the same time, even though it made me narrow it down, they gave really good, honest advice.
Mhm.
And the other thing I did, I think that made a difference, is when I reached out to them, I said, 30 minutes or less. We always went over, and I apologize profusely, but I think knowing that, it's just gonna be a little snippet, and it's just a short time of part of my day, I could do that. And out of all the ones that I sent a request for, there was only two who never responded.
Okay. That's
Mm-hmm.
really good odds. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that is something that is overlooked. And people will say either yes or no, or
Mm-hmm.
just don't respond, but you will never know until you actually make the ask. And kudos to you for doing that. So you found that the information interviews were helpful. Yes.
I found that they were very helpful because it's not something you do in education, and it's not something that's really encouraged in education. They tell you to research the school, that's it. But by talking to those people, especially the guy from Houston, I love the guy from Houston because he gave such great insight to things you would never think about and
Mm.
just shared. And I think when you do those interviews, it helps you decide, okay, first of all, is this an industry I want to be in? And second of all, do I really want to go after this position? Is it something that is really going to fit me? And by
Mhm.
talking to those people, that's how you help narrow it down. And that's when things really started to change, when it came to how I wrote my resume, how I did a letter, how I contacted businesses, what type of jobs I looked for, how I completed the questions. You know how some applications they have like a paragraph you have to respond in.
Right.
So it really helped. Yeah, it really helped formed those ideas and what I needed to target.
That's fantastic.
What a great start to the conversation with Jennifer. I loved her authenticity to be focused on your job search and use strategies such as leveraging LinkedIn for connections, asking for informational interviews, and asking questions of your connections about their experience working in the project management field. Stay tuned for the next episode where Jennifer and I will talk about additional tips she put in place to find her current project management role. Thanks so much for listening.